How to stay motivated through design, not just raw discipline. If you don't know me, my name's Ollie. I'm the founder of the Body Reset, and we work with thousands of busy professionals over 40 to get their body energy back on their side. And what I want to walk you through today is sort of the three key pillars that allow a lot of our clients to really stay more consistent than they otherwise have been ever before or in previous years, just make it easier on themselves. And I think in today's world, there's a lot of stuff out there that's saying you just need to do more, you need to be more disciplined, you need to grit your teeth and get through, or it doesn't matter and you need to be more wishy-washy and just miss 5 days and hopefully you get back on track. I think there's a middle ground, and I want to walk you through what we suggest to our clients to make this easier. These three key pillars will allow you to redesign both how you think about motivating yourself, but two, how you tweak or refine your environment or those prompts in your day to simply make it easier. Because it's really easy when you set a goal to feel motivated for a couple of days, but just wait until that project gets busy, you've had a couple of nights sleep that weren't so great, you haven't eaten well, and now look at your decision making. Like, that's what we're trying to optimize for here, is making sure that you don't just do the workout on a good day, but you do it when you're a little bit tired, you run down, or you actually have that filtering process to say, hey, today's not actually a workout day. I need to focus more on recovery, nurturing this body in order to make sure my hormonal status, digestive health, and overall immune function is actually going to be good to go tomorrow, right? So really, it's not just a binary, you have to work out every day or you're not fit or you're not going to pursue your goals. A lot of really smart, very healthy people are going to say, hey, today I'm a little bit run down, I'm going to work out tomorrow. And here's some of the prompts I can work with to just make sure that today is still productive. I still feel like I'm on top of my health. So the first one I want to really dive into to really be more consistent with your goals as a whole. And this is on the back of potentially setting some sort of targets or intentions for this year. I'm not going to call them resolutions. And the first training and mindset call that we did for the year with our clients was around this idea of simplifying our day, being able to say no. Because the reason that some people succeed in their goals over the year and some that don't is not based on how good the goal was, right? We can talk about SMART goals, right? Being specific and measurable all day. But if we're just doing so much in our day that we're just so exhausted that we can't fit them in, then it's going to be something that is really, really hard to achieve and a lot less likely to. So being able to get clear on what you want to do is also getting clear on what we can't do and what we can't do for a season, right? And I think this is really, I'm really, really careful around not just saying no to everything, right? The way of improving health is just to restrict and make it harder and be disciplined. It's the opposite of what this video is about. I'm trying to make sure that in order to achieve the stuff you want to achieve, there does need to be a season of simplification. And I think the way to look at that is twofold. One, you can say all of these things I can't do, or I'm actually choosing me and I'm actually fitting me back in. And by prioritizing the things that are most important to me, what are the top of those lists? Maybe there's a couple of key projects. There's, of course, family, our kids, that time to be present, and hopefully a couple of health goals in there in regards to maybe you're trying to improve key markers in your blood work. Maybe you're trying to shift a couple of kilos off your waistline, or you're trying to get fitter, stronger, in particular lifts/exercises. All of that requires a level of focus. And depending on how many different events that you're saying yes to, birthday parties, conferences, travel, extra projects on the side, all of this extra stuff. It could even be the fact that you're already fit and you're doing the squash, the yoga, the Pilates, and the mountain biking, but you also want to get better at running. Well, at some point, we need to kind of simplify that list down a bit to simply say that it's not that you can't go back to squash or to Pilates in 3 or 6 months. It's getting good at a goal allows you to create the space to do that more often, right? So the focus, I actually wrote down cognitive load here, but really it's just real capacity in your day. And this is where probably, if you've listened to a couple of our podcasts, we're no stranger to talking about time blocking. And one of the really, really key things that I don't think we emphasize enough is when you time block something in and get clear on how long things actually take, it gets very apparent very quickly how little time in your week you truly have, right? To control, to manage, to adjust. So this is why I bring it up first. If you've got these goals, and whether they're smart, measurable goals, or whether they're just general intentions and something you really want to get in place, those goals are always going to be easier to achieve by simply simplifying all the things that you say yes to in your day. And from experience, talking to a lot of clients, having that discussion around seasons of simplification, seasons of removing noise and additional stimulus that distract you from your goals is a really nice way to just hone in and focus. And I do these videos on a Thursday every week, on a day that is not full of calls, not full of everybody asking for my attention. I spend the morning more in that thinking time, more in this space. I haven't talked to anyone since 10 a.m. this morning. It's now 2 o'clock. Now, of course, that's only 4 hours, but I'm in a place space where that highlights how rare is it to have 4 hours of focus time for so many of us, right? Now, am I asking you to have that level of monk mode? Not at all. But to be able to focus on the things that you really care about, I think it's a really, really great place to start. So have that little audit, that little focus around potentially where we can start to refine aspects of that day in order to bring it back to fitting you in. And I think that overall mindset of just focusing on quality over quantity is a very big intention of mine this year, but is also a really nice way to give yourself that breathing room to do the things you want to do and do them well. All right, so first big pillar, remove that cognitive load and really be able to focus a little bit more on the stuff that matters. The second one is I've written down finding your fire here, but the concept that I'm really looking at here is really to double tap on this idea of what you're adding versus what you're removing. And to address the common, spiral that a lot of people fall into, or the yo-yo from a goal setting standpoint, is you feel really motivated, you do something for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or even 3 months, but then as soon as the goal has been hit in regards to a particular threshold or weight, or an event has been achieved in regards to a half marathon or a swim, etc. As soon as that event or that result is out the way, you feel unmotivated again and you feel kind of lost until you find your next event. Now, I'm really in the middle here. I don't think that just having a vague feeling and no targets is helpful, because you won't necessarily push yourself or feel as focused. But if you're only ever motivated by having an Ironman in the distance that you have to get ready for, I also find that that can be quite ebb and flowy. And from the people we've worked with, shouldn't really be the only driver. And I don't like to use the word shouldn't, but it seems to be less helpful. So what I'm looking at here with this adverse remove aspect of finding your fire is it shouldn't just be on what you lack, right? And what I mean by that is most people are motivated by pain. I'm willing to bet that most motivation, 95% plus, comes from what we lack, right? I have to get in shape because my scales have gone up and I'm now 95 kilos and I used to be 80. Or I can't fit these jeans anymore, or I can't keep up with my kids. I can't, right? There's all these things that are negatives. And I think at some point people have to hit a threshold in order to make a change. I do think that there's a level of there's so much stuff in our day that just being able to pay attention to things, it gets noisier and noisier until we listen, right? So I do understand why it's that way. I just think that it's not helpful that if you're listening to this podcast or this video, you're probably you're more interested in continual learning. You're a little bit more aware of your feelings, thoughts, and actions, that we can break this cycle by talking about it. And I think being able to look at, if you're listening to this right now, have a think about how do you talk to yourself when you're pushing at 90% plus, right? Because it's really easy to say, yeah, I talk to myself nicely when I wake up in the morning. Or maybe not, right? You get out of bed and you have to really give yourself a kick in the pants to get out of bed. But really being able to think about when something's really hard, how do you talk to yourself? Is it about what you lack and how much you're, not proud of yourself, or whatever the thing might be, right? I was hesitating because there's lots of words I could say, but probably not PC. But looking at this space where being able to look at, well, instead of using you're a piece of whatever, the opposite of that is, come on, you got this, or you're the best person to do this, or you'll feel better for it, or those sorts of phrases. There's a subtle but very, really important difference between being supportive and rewarding versus being quite detrimental and generally criticizing. And I think just looking at the way you talk to yourself will probably highlight a bigger picture of where that fire truly comes from. How do you push yourself? How do you motivate yourself? And knowing that most people go through this yo-yo of I'm motivated, I'm not, majority of the time it comes down to one of the two things we've addressed so far. One, their day is so noisy that they simply don't know how to say no. How do we remove stuff from our day to simply be able to take back our time and be able to get very clear on what's truly important to us? If we do everything for everyone else, we're saying yes to everyone and we're saying no to ourselves every single time. And I don't think that we allow that conversation to enter our head. And for the women on the call, I do think that this is something you're more susceptible to. I think mothers in general, from the ones we've worked with, simply from observation, has been that you get such reward for looking after members of your family, but there's a threshold where that becomes detrimental, right? And again, purely just from talking to women, I'm noticing that that's a little bit more of a theme. I do see it with men as well, in more of this provider mentality, but I do, in regards to, I think men get more satisfaction from a provide rather than a give. And it's a subtle difference, but I'll have to think about that more in order to communicate it. When we look at this overall giver mentality, I think it's just a really nice way to address where do you draw the line? Because if you give so much that you're giving from an empty cup, well, you've got nothing left to give, right? And that's for yourself as well. You're running on empty. And that's where hormonal status and digestion and immune function and all these other things start to get so much worse as well, right? So where am I going here? We've talked about cognitive load, we've talked about simplifying your day, and we've also talked about where that motivation comes from. When we start to get really clear on what being healthy is, a very simple concept, what does that actually mean to us? Because for 80% of the population, or probably that same 95% of people that only are motivated to get healthy by hitting a threshold of pain in order to do so, probably associate feeling healthy with all the things I need to remove, right? To be healthy, I have to remove alcohol. To be healthy, I need to remove sugar, right? Like all of these things that I lack. Whereas if you talk to the people that are being healthy for a really long period of time, they talk about capability, about strength, about energy, about vitality, about just all of these things that I'm able to do and nourish my body to feel that way more often, right? It's so much more positive. It's so much more reinforcing of things I wish I could do more often. I had a call with a client the other day who had a couple of weeks that were less than ideal food. He wasn't in control of all of those meals here and there. But what I really liked about what he was talking about was, I just can't wait to get back into eating healthy so I can feel that way again, right? Like it's an excitement to feel a certain way. So just from a basic psychology of you will always do what you like doing or what you feel good doing more often, right? And if that feel good factor is associated with alcohol, you'll do that more often. If your feel good factor is associated with a good breakfast, you'll do that more often, right? And I do think that maybe they aren't separate, right? But I think being able to address how you look at being healthy. What does truly being healthy mean? Are you focusing on all the things I need to remove to be healthy? Or are you focusing on the things I can add to be healthy? I think it's a really nice distinction that allows you to focus on not just gritting your teeth and being disciplined, but also just having a better association with health, and you will do those things more often, right? It's a bit of a thinker for you. The last one that I want to look at is this concept of an action line. And if you can visualize this on a graph, the concept is that anything over the action line is something that you do more often, and anything under the action line is something that you don't do as often. Now, there's two ways that you can design this. This is where the design over discipline discussion comes in, is if there's things that you want to do less often, we need to design our lifestyle in a way that makes it harder to do something, right? Adding friction. Whereas if there's something that we want to do that we're not doing, then we need to remove friction, right? Add some lubricant to make it happen more often. So being able to be in a spot of thinking about this action line, this threshold of how do I make this thing happen more often if it's positive or less often if it's negative, right? So a negative option might be something like, I got into a bit of a habit over the break of having ice cream or having dessert after every dinner, and I felt sluggish and tired and a bit bloated, and I want to do that less often so I can get leaner, I can feel more energetic, and I might sleep better too because I'm not as congested or bloated, right? Well, that becomes, it's currently above the action line because it's in my fridge every day and it's really easy to do. How do I get that below the action line? And the concept that we can use here is simply, well, if it's always in the fridge, it's really easy to eat. So the first component could be here is only buy it in punnets, right? So if you do want to have ice cream with your kids, with your family, or when you're out, have that as dessert at a restaurant, or have that when you go to the supermarket and you get your ice cream, you buy a single serve, right? So you get to enjoy that ice cream. But if it's always in the freezer, then it's so much more likely to just have every night, right? The alternative there, and this is more of a subtle one, if you feel that there's other people in the household that would have the ice cream and you don't want it to be their burden, well, look at other options. A couple for me is if I have some blueberries, which are very low sugar, high antioxidants, and I really like them, it allows me to get that sweet sort of curbed in regards to enjoying the taste of something and not needing something else sweet, that it becomes a really nice shift, right? The kids might have ice cream, I might have berries. Really nice adjustment. Or another one, it sounds weird, but it works very well, is as soon as dinner's done, just go brush your teeth. And generally wanting to eat ice cream after that's a bit weird as well, right? So it's just a deterrent. It's adding friction so that the thing happens less often. I'm adding design, not discipline there. The second one is, okay, what's something I want to do more often than I'm not currently doing, right? And I think the tweak here, a subtle one that my wife is using very often, is if I have to come home to then exercise and I see that very comfortable couch, very hard to then get back up, get motivated and go for the run, right? Whereas if I take my shoes and my running shoes and my exercise gear to work with me, and I make sure I run before I come back home, get on the bus, sort of calm down, it's 7 o'clock, it's too late, all these things, I just make it easier to do. So I take my work clothes, my workout clothes with me, I go for the run while I'm at work before I then come home, and then when I can sit on the couch, I can actually enjoy it because I don't have to get back up and go for that run, right? So it's a really nice way of looking at those small, subtle design tweaks, and we hear so many of these ones that are amazing that just make it so much easier for things to happen on default rather than waiting for that little bit of discipline. All right, because think about how often I've done this before where you come home, you sit on the couch like, oh, this feels good. I need to get that workout in. I'm not motivated enough. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow, right? And I miss another day, right? So we're removing that discussion. We're adding friction to the stuff that we don't want to do as often, like the ice cream analogy, or we're removing friction where we want to go for a run more, we want to work out more, right? So that's the final pillar. Those are the three that I wanted to address with you that hopefully get you to audit your week around how we can make it just a little bit easier for you to win on default rather than constantly needing a new dose of willpower or motivation, because it will be fleeting, right? You're going to have days that you're really highly motivated and other days that you're a little bit worn out, a little bit tired, and willpower is a little bit lower. It is something that ebbs and flows. That's entirely normal. And the people that win are not the ones with the most willpower. They're the ones with the most design. Being intentional about your day, intentional about how to win more often is the key that we've seen with a lot of our clients, and we lean on it all the time, right? So your big three pillars: cognitive load, reduce it where you can. The second part is find your fire. Find the things that make you excited to be healthy, not the ones that make you go, oh, yeah, I need to do that. And then the last one is simply, how can we get things above the action line or below the action line to make it easier to win on default? I hope you've enjoyed this, guys. We'll see you on the next one. And until next time, just have a little think about how you can make stuff easier for you. Nobody gets a big gold star for making things harder than they need to be. Just make it easier, do it more often. See you guys. Bye.